Okay.
Okay, greetings from Los Angeles, California. I'm Dr. Alex Parsinia, and today what we'd like to talk about is the dark side of leadership. Because most of the time, when we talk about leadership as an attribute, as a huge force, because I mean, think about it. The whole world has been shaped because of some people, some key leaders in the world, that they basically had a vision as far as what a particular country should move toward and so forth. Uh, and most of the time we're talking about the positive side of leadership, but there's also a dark side of leadership. In other words, let's think of examples. Uh, would you consider Hitler as a leader? Of course, he was a leader. I mean, to the extent that he created a vision for Germany. It wasn't the right vision. It wasn't. It was at the end. It turned out to be quite destructive. It turned out to basically affect the Germans in a worse type of scenario where their whole country got destroyed and they had to rebuild it. Look at Stalin. Stalin killed more than 10 million Russians alone. So he had a vision for Russia, but basically it was a vision based on creating fear, based in creating very negative scenario, based on punishment, based on death. I mean, both Hitler and Stalin sent a lot of their own people to death and destruction. So there is a dark side to leadership as well, because people who become leaders of countries or groups or companies, and essentially they have a vision, or they have a motivation, and they have basically a model for the company that is based on fear, based on mistrust, based on destruction, based on really only personal gains, could create quite of a negative scenarios here. Uh, Now, look at, for example, David Koresh, where again, was he a leader? Absolutely, he was a leader, because how could somebody motivate a large number of people? I think somewhere like 50, 60 people, and send them to their death and destruction, and they would follow him all the way through. So there is a bad side to leadership. I mean, look at Osama bin Laden. He created an organization, a global organization, and essentially his vision is based on dogma, based on hate, based on mistrust, based on inhumanity, basically. And of course, it is basically based on poison, and it has created a lot of problems for us. So most of what you see in a lot of countries, most of the countries actually in the world are run by some form of dictatorship. It's not really democracy. It's really what you see. The majority of the countries are run by dictatorship. Most ordinary citizens as it says in your text, in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Libya, Jordan, Chad, Zimbabwe, Iran, Turkmenistan, China, and Russia do not have much to say about what happens in their country, because essentially you're dealing with leaders at the top that they would not tolerate any resistance, they would not tolerate any form of inputs from their citizens. And of course, that is the dark side to leadership. That this again, they're leaders, they're moving their country or their organization forward, but it is poisonous. It is moving toward so to the extent that within leadership concept that leaders tend to use more of a dictatorship and more of a forces that are not to the it's not really to the benefit of the followers and the company or the country. Of course, you're going to have negative attributes. Now, if we go back to the three-force model that we've talked about before, which is forces in leaders, forces in situation, and forces in the followers, what causes some of these negative side or dark side to leadership? Now, what you see in leaders in these scenarios, that first of all, the leaders they don't have an overall understanding of what they want to do, or sometimes they do, but it is the wrong. It's a negative vision. You see some scenarios that the leaders really lack information, that they're not really understanding what's happening in the whole world, that they would isolate their country in such a negative way that on a long-term basis they're going to have problems. They actually lack self-discipline and self-control, and they, within their personality, there's a dark side in terms of their traits and in terms of shared values. Now, what happens in this situation? There's always the threats. I mean, you see that there is the issue of threats. I mean, what you see also in this situation, the globalization. I mean, essentially before they could hide a lot of the information, but because of the globalization, because of the telecommunication, because of iPhone, everybody in the world is aware of what's going on. And now in terms of the followers, you see a lot of the followers that are going to be not trusting, that they're not going to have motivation, they're going to be disruptive, there are going to be problems within there in terms of motivating them. So while we're talking about leadership as a very positive force, but some leaders also can use leadership as very strong negative force, which would actually, I mean, as I indicated, in situations like with Hitler, Mussolini, with Osama bin Laden, with Idi Amin, how these leaders became very self-destructive. Not that they destroyed themselves, but also they destroyed their countries, a lot of their people there, and in effect, loss of human life, loss of properties, and so forth. Thank you very much. Take care.